In 2016, I had just graduated university. ISIS was rampaging through Iraq and Syria. And I somehow fell into a series of conference calls with intelligence officials, number ones and number twos of CIA, MI6, Mossad. I went to a summit in Palo Alto, probably about 20 people. We have a former jihadi, and we have a guy by the name of Arno Machialis, who started the largest white supremacist group in the United States before becoming a peace activist. Something everybody said, the intelligence officials, these guys who started and participated in extreme violent groups, that people were drawn to these groups for belonging. You had kids who grew up in France and the UK who never felt that they belonged there. You know, Muslim kids, Muslim parents, never felt that they belonged there. They traveled all the way to Turkey and into Syria to join ISIS. People are starved for belonging, and they will do crazy things to get it without realizing what they're doing.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Welcome, Seth, to the Jew Function.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It is. It has been now a week since the ceasefire. It was eerily quiet the past few days here. Everyone is still playing very nice to one another. Even Netanyahu had a few warm words to say about the opposition. I mean, there's still a lot of craziness happening around his trial and everything, and even Trump's little nudge didn't. I don't know if it did much besides angering his opposers and emboldening his supporters, but. It was interesting to see how the minute Trump was like, "Hey, it's terrible what you're doing to Bibi," everybody's like, "Oh, it's terrible. Well, why is another country intervening with that?" And then, 6 months earlier or 2 years earlier, when the war started, and Biden was like, basically, running the military and the government, from a distance. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, sure, we welcome American intervention." In short, when it's the guy you like, you're willing to tell yourself all kinds of stories, right? It's kind of like with us, with the Jews, right? If you like the Jews, then you're going to find all the reasons to love them, and if you hate the Jews, you're going to find all the reasons to burn them at the stake, right? That's kind of how it works, isn't it?
There's some fundamental psychological things that I think are. By the way, isn't it weird also that it was like last week was World War III and it's over already? It was like the fastest World War ever.
It was a warm up to World War III. Don't spoil the.
I think God, in his typical style, like in the Egypt stories, like I want to show my signs and wonders. I'm gonna harden his heart so I can show my signs and wonders. I don't think he's gonna let Trump be the star of the show. He usually likes to.
Well, don't tell Trump, though. We don't want to hurt his feelings.
So there's, what is becoming super clear right now is when we see things, we should realize that they're features of the system, not flaws of the system. For example, we notice that everybody is a sheep, right? Like they'll just do whatever they're told. But that's not a flaw. Like at first, when you were younger, we said, "Oh, it's terrible. Everyone's a sheep." It's actually a great feature if you could have a good shepherd, so everyone will go do the right thing. There's this other thing, and we talked about it before. How the
you
Western
just call everybody sheep. I don't know.
Yes, how the Western. I dare someone to try and prove me wrong. So how the Western mind looks at the world is incapable of understanding the Eastern mind. We have now a situation that's becoming more and more clear, more and more publicized throughout the world, and it's making its way into Western Europe, and it's making its way to the United States and New York City now with the mayoral candidate, that it's not like we have two sides, like with Iran, for example. Can't we just make peace? Or with Hamas, can't we just, you guys get a little something and we get a little something? It's two opposing worldviews that cannot exist together. It's like fire and water. They can exist in heaven, fine, like it says, but they don't exist on earth together. So both of these forces, spiritually, there's a way to blend them together. But on earth, there's no some happy thing. We're going to get all the Muslims and all the Jews to just agree if these ones need to kill these ones, and these ones are hoping for some other vision of the world. There is a psychological reckoning that needs to happen before the problem can be solved. If you don't know, if you're like playing basketball rules on a soccer field, it doesn't matter how good you are. You can't win because you're not playing by the rules of the game. And I hope that this is where these conversations are going to start to go, is to recalibrate ourselves to not looking at situations and wars and different kinds of people as the little anomalies, but recalibrating ourselves and understanding what are the actual forces that are operating now and what is the correct approach to view them. Because if we don't view them correctly, it doesn't matter how great a basketball player is. If we're playing soccer, we're never going to win. And that's where I hope these conversations start going.
I hope so too. I think we might still see the unification of Christians and Muslims against the Jews at some point. That might happen. But you're right. I think it's slowly becoming clear that if you look at, enough steps into the future, you'll see that there's a big issue. Doesn't matter how many peace treaties you sign and trade deals and this and that and the other. There's some fundamental, chasms that happen between big worldviews, but also, more importantly, between everyday people. Like if you really try to get close to your neighbor who, with whom you share a lot of things, and you may fight over, where the fence goes through the yard. So seemingly, it's a tiny thing. We have more in common than we have, in opposition. That's an illusion. Actually, the deeper you dig, the more you'll see that you have a ton of things that separate you, and you have to do a lot of work, a lot of inner work to overcome that and to sort of care for him. Dare I say, love him, even if you don't like him. Kind of like how our last guest, Ashira, was saying, right? Something that she learned. So I think we're at a very interesting time. People have to do a lot of internal scrutinies and psychological overcoming. I also think that we're seeing somewhat of the death of the Freudian approach to life and psychology, and maybe the rise of the Adlerian approach, which is close to us. There's another Jew, but basically they split. Freud was like, you're a victim, and just talk to someone forever. Nothing will help. And Adler was like, no, take ownership of your life. You're not a victim of anything. You can be a contributing member of society, and you can change everything. So I think we're starting to make some changes, and I think it's going to be really interesting to hear from the younger generation. And every time we have a guest, I feel like my mind opens up. So before we invite our guest, and we have a very special guest. He's not a guest; he's really a friend by now. I met him when we, if you remember, we had Gary Wexler on the show. It was a great episode. We had him twice here. And we talked to him right after October 7th, but 2023. He told
us he was going to vote for Kamala.
That's we forgive him about that. But he wrote a really very poignant article about the need to win the media battle, and that got him a lot of attention. A lot of people gathered around him, and one of the people that found him was this friend of ours, Jonas, that we're going to invite in a moment. And I started to talk to him, and immediately it became clear to me that this guy is a little different than everyone else. All the other big influencers and influential people, he had like just a fresh view on things, and it was interesting. He does have a degree in philosophy from UCLA, and he started to talk about, I think, to write about the issues Jews will be facing as early as 2017. Not as early as us, but early enough for someone who really grew up and matured in America. He's from the West Coast, which makes him an even more interesting human to speak to. And he writes about what's happening right now about Jewish revivalism. We'll hear from him. What does that mean to him? And he's just a great guy all around. So let's just invite him and enough, with our little chit chat, and let's
do it.
get talking. Jonas.
Hey guys.
Jonas. Hey. Good morning.
Good
Jonas
morning.
Sota. By the way, he's got an amazing story. I don't know if we'll have time to hear the entire story, but he was kind enough to tell me his genealogical background and his grandma and Argentinian and the rebels and was that Argentina or Bolivia?
Chile.
Yeah.
Other side of the mountains.
Yeah, exactly. Chile.
We can't hear the story, at least in an abridged version.
Okay, fine. All right. So let's hear the story, because it's a great story, and then you'll elegantly will guide you, will help you find your way toward Jewish revivalism, which is where we are now. I think
Sure.
they're connected, these stories. So tell us where do you come from, Jonas?
Where do I come from? I think I come from a pretty unique mix. My mother was born in Poland in 1947, I want to say.
That's a good year to be born in Poland.
Great time for Jews. I still don't know why my grandparents went back to Poland. I don't know what choice they had. They, during the war, ended up in Uzbekistan and then made their way back to Poland. Some Jews went to other European countries, some went to Israel, some somehow got to the US, some went to Latin America from Uzbekistan. I don't know why they went back to Poland, but they did.
Let's give the Poles another chance. It's like Homer Simpson. Let's try the red wire again. It's fine. I'm sure they have good reasons. Go on.
So anyways, my mother had a very challenging childhood being a Jew in Poland. There's a lot to say about that. When she was about 17, 18, the Jews were exiled from Poland. Now, the way that the Soviets were framing this it wasn't a problem with Jews, it was a problem with Zionists. So we've seen what's happening in Western countries before. Right. And let's put a pin in that to discuss, okay, where do things go when anti-Zionism is institutionalized? Meanwhile, my father, not a Jew, was born in Chile. My family, that side of the family, has been there since sometime in the 1800s.
Could be a Jew.
Well, my brother got them a 23andMe, and I don't think there's no Ashkenazi in them.
Okay.
More than Ashkenazi Jews, my friend.
But there's a lot of Jews that ended up over there with the whole Columbus situation and all that.
Well, none of that came up, but there's a fair amount of indigenous Latin American blood in them. So I get to use that talking point with the woke mob.
Indigenous.
So anyways, as some viewers might know, there was a coup in 1973. There was a socialist president of Chile at the time. The country was was quite cozy with the Soviets. My grandparents were in government. My grandfather was
just to close that a little hold. They were exiled from Poland and they chose Chile.
No, there's separate families.
Oh, that was
separate
okay.
Families. So my family that was exiled from Poland went to the U.S. They went to Boston.
Oh, okay, went to the U.S.
1968. Yeah.
Okay, cut to the other family in Chile. Go ahead.
So my grandfather was in Congress, not in the same party as the president. He was one of the founders of the Christian Democrats in Chile. And so they were an allied party of the president. My grandmother was slated to be the first minister of women's affairs in the country. This is a new institution that was to be created. And then there was a coup. General Augustus Pinochet initiated a coup, took over the government. The president committed suicide using a Kalashnikov gifted to him by Fidel Castro. My grandmother has a photo with Fidel Castro at a conference. Maybe it was in Cuba, maybe elsewhere in Latin America. Shortly after the revolution in Cuba, she tells me you like to flirt with women, and is feeling very good about himself, having won the revolution. So my grandparents were they were really in it in the political scene in Latin America. They weren't communists, but they were exiled. There's a kind of long story there, but my grandfather was arrested. My grandmother went into hiding. She hid at a few different monasteries in the hills. My father snuck her to the French embassy. My father's 6 younger siblings joined her at the embassy, and the French got them a plane out. And from France, she was able to convince a French diplomat to apply pressure on the Chilean government to release her husband, who was imprisoned. And this is a time before social media. The Chilean government didn't want international attention on what they were doing, so they figured, okay, they'll stop making noise about this guy if we let him go. So eventually they let him go. They lived in France for a while. Point being, both of my parents, separate incidents, were political refugees. Which certainly gives me perspective, not in the way people would think about, what does it mean to lose your home, and what kind of life are you able to build afterwards. Funnily enough, both of my parents, as a result of losing their homes, were able to build, in a way, richer lives than they would have otherwise been able to. So that's my familial history. I think the reason why, I think the primary.
Hold on. Where did your parents meet then? Just tie that loose end.
Yeah. So that ties into what I was about to say. I grew up in Berkeley, California. That's where they met. They were working for the same employer in Berkeley, California. And so I grew up in a house with multiple cultures and narratives. And so from a young age, I learned how to jump, not just from one culture to another, but from one narrative to another. And so I think most of my peers in the U.S. really only know how to be in the Western narrative, in the narrative that they were brought up in. And at a young age, I gained the ability to go learn it on other narratives and jump into them and understand how to be in another narrative.
Is that a genetic thing, or is this an environmental thing? Beats you. Okay, now we're trying to replicate it, maybe because I feel like more people need help,
also, where the
narratives, other ideas.
Someone wants chicken and someone wants fish. That's 2 different kind of narratives. It's were the narratives ever competing at like such a primal level or such an essence level that you couldn't resolve things?
I would say not up until recently, not up until the war. Because my family in Chile, 1, not Jewish, 2, they're leftists. And they've fallen into the same pattern of dehumanizing Israelis as we've seen elsewhere.
So what do they make of you?
I can only guess. My guess is they think that I am so caught up in trauma that I am blind to what is obvious.
And what is the trauma?
The Holocaust and, being attacked and yada, yada, yada.
Okay, that's a Freudian approach, all this trauma, all this baggage, and now you're trapped and you're stuck and you got to talk to someone, pay a lot of money, and it's not going to do you much good, but you're going to feel good that you're trying. And
right. You. And it's got nothing to do with, real things happening in the world today, right? It's all sort of smoke. that we're hallucinating these threats.
So you said you're so caught up in trauma that what?
That I'm blind to what is obvious, like what is happening.
What is obvious?
What's happening in Gaza is some of my cousins would use the language genocide. Some of my younger cousins are more leftist. Go for it.
I was gonna say, like when people say things like that, when you look at, for example, population numbers, right? It's clear it's not a genocide.
Of course.
Right. So it's not really about facts then, right? It's something else.
Of course not.
So what's it about if it's not about facts?
Well, Latin Americans, let's talk about Chile in particular. Chileans have a conflicted relationship with the U.S. This isn't really about Jews for them. It's about the U.S. Okay, because the coup that happened in 1973 was supported by the CIA. They see the U.S. as the empire. And I've had this conversation with my cousins since I was a teenager. It's a very emotional issue for them. At the same time, they consume American music and American film. The political movement there, for the past 15, 20 years, there's been a lot of student protests. There's been a burgeoning political movement. It's mostly borrowing from the American left. They're heavily influenced by American culture. I would say actually Chile, more than any other country, doesn't seem to have, it has much less of its own homegrown culture, and they adopt a lot of American culture. At the same time, a lot of people there are still angry about the coup. They're still angry about being under what they feel is American influence. They feel, many of them, particularly the leftists there, they feel part of the global South. So this sort of, victim masses of the world. And they view the U.S. as
you should all be pissed off at Spain. Down there, right? I mean,
well, so here's the
thing in South America.
I've asked them. I've had many over the years, several conversations, which literally me against all of my cousins, and I have 18 cousins, so me against a room full of people and aunts and uncles looking on.
High cousins, sign from above.
And I asked them, well, if you had to choose between the Soviet Union and the U.S. being the dominant power in the world, who would you choose? All of them were silent, except for one shyly admitted, okay, I get your point. Their response is it's not rational. It's purely emotional.
So this is so critical what you're saying, because it doesn't matter how many facts we have at the end of the day, right? Right. So you could lay all the facts out.
But just to advance this already, because this is going in a good direction. I think the question is not, like we already established in this show, that facts are, in post-truth world, as Fred Menachem said here, right? But the question is, what is so appealing about the ideology, the idea, the sort of the pure idea that was exported by communist Russia, that appealed to so many people? Maybe if people understood, if we all understood what is the yearning, the desire, and then we can ask,
story.
Okay, well, can we get there? What's stopping us?
What's our story? We needed to tell the greatest story.
Well, hold on. That's a big ask. I'm asking first. Let's try to understand what's the problem with that story, because everybody, as Jonas said, and I think we all know, if you talk to people who are open enough and you look at the facts, you can see that every communist country failed at the same point. They all start great, and then it deteriorates very quickly. Something is not letting humans live in a commune, right? Like in a true altruistic commune where people give everything they can and they receive what they need and they help each other. What's the fuel for getting a person out of bed in that place.
So a couple of things to say. First of all, they don't all start good. They start bloody.
You could say the transition is bloody, and some argue.
Sure.
You could argue if what's the best way to try to remove a Band-Aid, right? You can this nice and slow, this quick and painful. That's a change. Let's leave the change aside for a second.
Sure. That was just an aside.
Yeah.
I think you're kind of getting at least at one of the fundamental points here when you said commune. People want to live in the commune. They want or community. People want unity. I mean, I was thinking a few weeks ago, I realized, what is it that anti-Zionist Jews, what is it that they want? They want unity with the world. And the Jewish community at large has not been making our narrative of unity with the world accessible. There is a narrative there.
But it's not, my friend, it's not unity. They want to feel included. That's been always the Jewish story has always been, especially in modern times, it was always there. But back in the day when Jews had a very strong ghetto and a strong, I'll call it faith, just to put it out there, but we it's a different concept. But let's just say had a strong faith, something that bound them together, a certain relationship with something deeper, higher, more meaningful, let's call it. They were more or less protected. There were always outliers, but the core was there. Once that opened up, especially moving into Russia and getting the Jews out of the ghetto and human rights and revolutions and Zionism and all that, that's when the problems really started, because that attempt to, we want to belong, that has been driving Jewish decisions, Israeli political decisions. So many things are decided.
I think that's happening too. I think that's happening too. But if there's a sort of higher level philosophical desire, right? There's a very sort of animalistic desire for safety and to be included. But from an ideological perspective, they see Zionism, they see Jews being separate from in any way as counter to their ideology, their vision for unity of humanity. And this is why progressives they're against a whole host of ways of dividing people, religion being one of them. Not that Jews, I don't consider Jews to be a religion or a religious group. But that's why they're against Christians or Christianity, that, they want everybody to be the same, which isn't actually, in a way, that's a common theme amongst, Christians and Muslims,
which is
for everybody to be the same.
People are not the same.
I agree.
And they're willing to kill everyone who doesn't see the same as they are. I mean,
right. It's
the worst possible approach to any sort of liberalistic, humanistic,
absolutely. It's a deeply flawed look. But the point the point I'm making here is, they're chasing a narrative about unity of humanity. The Jewish tradition has a narrative. It includes unity of humanity, but we don't talk about it. And they've never been exposed to it. So that's, we're talking, what's the appeal of communism? I think because communism is we're all going to be together and we're all going to be united. Of course, that's not what happens, but I think that's part of what appeals to people. The other thing that I think appeals to people is it's a narrative that helps people. It justifies their desire to not take responsibility for their own decisions.
So, laziness.
You could describe it as laziness. I think it's more so fear. It's fear of taking this responsibility. They're great. And I think this is actually the narrative to be pushing for Jews in particular, but for humanity as well, is empowerment. What is empowerment? Empowerment is taking responsibility for your decisions.
When you go to a sports event, like a big sports event, I don't really care for sports that much, but if you go to the Super Bowl, for example, like for example, running, track, I don't care about track, but if you go to the Olympic thing, like everybody's into it. You know, I don't care at all about swimming, but if you went and you watched, you know, the US competing for the gold medal, there'd be a fever in the room. This is like so many geniuses behind this whole support of Palestine situation that we have now. That first of all, the chant is great. Second of all, the kafia is you probably couldn't do better. You know, my son, I was taking my son to some college visits last year, and we saw some guy looking at himself in the mirror of a car. He was like, you know, he was wearing like Ralph Lauren, and he was like making sure that the keffiyeh fell just perfectly over his. It's like very, you know, you could do it on the hair, or you could do it over the neck. You could many ways to do it. It's like a perfect way. What I'm saying, the reason I brought up the sports, people have this thing in them that once there's a fever in the air, like if there's nobody watching a musician playing on the street, like almost no one will stop. But if the first 20 people are there, everyone else is going to come and see what's going on. And when there is this thing that's happening and it gives people, like everybody feels upset inside, everybody feels empty inside. And if we have, first of all, I can look cool. Second of all, I can feel included. Third of all, we can, and all we know, I mean, if you've been to like a Shabbat meal or anything, when you sing together, we live near a university, a big university. I saw people in the quad last year playing their guitars, you know, a whole encampment. I'm sure for this generation of kids, I mean, I don't know, how old are you?
32. Still
okay,
a kid.
So you're an old head, as my kids would say. But for like these 18, 20-year-old kids, right? I'm sure who grew up on Instagram, it was probably the first time in their life that they sat on the lawn with an acoustic guitar and sang a song together. So many things about this movement. Like for us, like Spiegler and I, like how many times did we skinny dip and, you know, take drugs and play acoustic guitars? We you know, it's like we don't need an excuse. He just did it, you know.
Came from the river.
For the podcast.
From the river to the sea.
So for them, it fulfills so many of the needs that people have to belong to
Keyword belong.
Yeah.
That's the
they
key
got the
word.
good songs, they got the good fashion, they got the good chant, they got the good sense of community, they got a sense of community. It's almost as if and you see these videos that, excuse me for going on so long, but you see these like man on the street kind of videos, like a guy shows up at the graduation at NYU and he's like, you know, what do you think about the, you know, did you even know October 7th? It's like, no, I'm not really sure what happened on October. You know, the people were wearing the keffiyehs and stuff at the graduation. It's like, what do you think about they go, well, I didn't really know about that. It's like people don't even know the details, and the details aren't even important.
So the key word there is belonging. In 2016, I had just graduated university. ISIS was rampaging through Iraq and Syria. And I somehow fell into a series of conference calls with intelligence officials, number ones and number twos of CIA, MI6, Mossad.
I added you to the Telegram chat. What happened?
Long story short, I'm not going to get into how I ended up in this. I went to a summit in Palo Alto, probably about 20 people. Again, wild that I'm sitting there next to the former head of MI6. We have a former jihadi, and we have a guy by the name of Arno Machialis, who started the largest white supremacist group in the United States before becoming a peace activist.
Talk to this guy.
You've talked to him?
No,
we should. Okay, great. Let's make it happen. Something everybody said, the intelligence officials, these guys who started and participated in extreme violent groups, that people were drawn to these groups for belonging. You had kids who grew up in France and the UK who never felt that they belonged there. You know, Muslim kids, Muslim parents, never felt that they belonged there. They traveled all the way to Turkey and into Syria to join ISIS for belonging. People are starved for belonging, and they will do crazy things to get it without realizing what they're doing.
That's That's what we
So
said.
what in our story does, I mean, Jews, you go on birthright, right? You just feel, the main thing you feel is like, this is my place. These are my people. I belong. You come to
Yeah.
Chabad on Friday night, even if you have like a tattoos all over yourself. You're like, whoa, they accept me. I belong here. This is my thing. What are we missing? What are the Jews missing? Why is this not?
Missing for who? For Jews? What is the Jewish
I'm not
community
sure, but
missing
it's
for
not.
Jews?
You said, like you said, this unity thing. It's not really part of our story. Like this belonging
Well,
thing. It's not
belonging with the
known.
rest of humanity. So what are all these? So
We don't
when you
belong with the rest of humanity, though. That's the
what
issue.
what in a sense we do. Of course, in a sense we do. I mean, if you think about the Jewish narrative, right? We're supposed to build the third temple, and the third temple is not supposed to be just for Jews. It's supposed to be for everybody. Right? We're supposed to be the model for other people for how to live
Right.
in alignment with Hashem. That's where the unity comes from, right? We're not supposed to think of ourselves in some ways. Yes, we're separate, but in some ways, we're all dust, just like everybody else. What you have in the U.S. right now is you have a lot of Jews. First of all, the winds of assimilation have been blowing for a long time in the U.S. American Jews have progressively become more and more assimilated. You have a lot of Jews of my generation, millennials, who, they went to a Reform synagogue growing up a little bit. Maybe they had a bar mitzvah. Reform synagogues in and of themselves are very assimilated. In adulthood, they might have a lot of Jewish friends by happenstance, but they don't really engage in the community very much. And then in, October 7th, in the aftermath of that, they have a decision to make, in their social circles. Do they go towards the Jews or do they go towards their progressive friends? And a lot of them don't know, they didn't feel that kind of belonging that I'm guessing the three of us feel with the Jewish community. I don't think this is a mistake. From the perspective of, from what Hashem is doing.
You mean like
American Jews,
you don't think it's a flaw in the system?
No, I don't think it's a flaw at all. In fact, I had a big epiphany when I was in Colorado a few weeks ago.
After that Molotov cocktail situation?
That's right. So on that Sunday, I got a call from a friend, a longtime friend. I've known him since I was a kid, 20 years. He gives me a call, which, my generation, it's weird, usually you send a text. He gives me a call. He says, "Hey, I hope your mom is okay." My mom lives in Boulder, Colorado. And I say, "What are you talking about? Like, I know something is up." And he said there was an attack on Pearl Street Mall. There was some sort of Jewish demonstration, Israeli demonstration. I know your mom goes to those things. And I realized, my mom goes on this march. She's been going every day pretty much since October 7th.
This is the pro-hostages march.
That's right. She's going on the march for the hostages every Sunday. So I say, okay, I have to call my mom. Thanks for telling me I have to call my mom. So I call my mom. Baruch Hashem, she picks up. I say, "Mom, are you okay?" She says, "Yeah, I'm fine." It turns out she was at the attack. She was actually standing right next to Karen Diamond, who's the 82-year-old woman who was completely engulfed in flames and recently just died a few days ago after a month. My mother was right next to her, immediately adjacent to her. Somehow she didn't get physically injured. So I flew there the next day. I spent the week with her. I met people who are part of the marching group. I met the leaders of the group. I met with Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL. I met with different leaders of the community. And while I'm there, I think midway, a few days into it, I have an epiphany. And maybe some context here is, especially since October 7th, but over the past 5-10 years, despite having grown up in a secular environment, I've become fairly observant. And I have this epiphany that Hashem willed this event. And, I'd been seeing what this event, the impact this event was having in the Boulder Jewish community. Boulder has a lot of Jews. I think it's something like 12% of the city has Jewish heritage. Oh, you're muted, Seth.
I said all those cool progressive cool places are filled with Jews.
That's right. But I think actually per capita, Boulder might have the most per capita people of Jewish heritage. This event hit close to home for those Jews. So those Jews who've been, for the most part, pretty disconnected from the tribe. And I think the events, October 7th and the ensuing events, have been reawakening people and calling people back to the tribe. And when I think about, what really dawned on me here is the way that assimilation was going in the U.S. It wouldn't be surprised if probably between 30 and 50% of millennial Jews who grew up in a sort of progressive secular environment, such as myself, if their grandchildren would not functionally be part of the tribe. So, I think like assimilation here is like has been really picking up steam. And Hashem is saying, it's time to come back. Now, not a lot, but some Jews are saying, no, I want to be American. I want out from this story. And this
I want to cancel my membership.
Yeah, that's right.
We know.
Right. Because this decision's being forced upon them over the past 20 months or so. Those guys were already going to be lost. But the number of Jews in the U.S. that I think were on the path of being lost and their bloodlines being lost, but have now come back. I mean, we're talking minimum several 100,000, but it could be a couple million. I mean, they say there's 6 million Jews in the U.S., but I don't know who they're counting. Are they counting like people who have one Jewish parent and, they don't have any connection to the tribe and to the tradition? I think so. So, it's hard to say what the different demographics are.
Liquid has a saturation point. Like if you start putting sugar or salt into water, like at a certain point, the water can't hold anymore. Right. And there's like these natural laws in the rest of the world. And there's also these laws with Jews, like at a certain point, like the system, like you say, like Hashem willed it, like the system just, if the Jews are falling out too much, the system does something that like pushes, like naturally somehow pushes the thing back. This guy may not even have known what compelled him that morning to do that, or
right.
We need to what Spieg and I have been going through in the last couple of years through this process is when this podcast began, we looked at our whole history and we just kept seeing this kind of thing, like how nature just keeps, stretching and squeezing and stretching and squeezing, and all the costumes change and all the scenery changes and the calendar changes, but that same process keeps happening. And we're now like in the book, this is like this is just like what happened in the Inquisition or whatever else. We're like in the story now. It's different characters, different places, but we're in the story.
Not that different, by the way. Just the Thursday right before when the Americans attacked in Iran, there was just a time in the story of Purim that the Jews rose and the Persians fell, right? So I don't know, coincidence. I don't know.
So the cycle, it's not new. We can study it. We can see it happening over and over again, and we know what's next. What's next for us is another Holocaust, another expulsion, another shitty situation, unless at this point now, it's inevitable at some point. There's never been a time in the Jewish people's history since the beginning that it didn't happen. So at some point it will happen again, unless we can proactively, instead of going in a circle, we can spiral this thing up and proactively bring that unity without the system needing to force it on us again. Like the Holocaust came and then we resettled in the land of Israel. Or, they're going to execute all the Jews in Purim, and then the Jews unite and they're saved. So we have an opportunity now to, hopefully people like you who know a lot of people and are active in social media, to present this unity, this situation, so that the natural system doesn't have to squeeze the hell out of us again to get us to. Right, Jonas?
Maybe that's what needs. Maybe that's what needs to happen.
It will happen, right?
And maybe it's not. And maybe it's not. I mean, yes, there are terrible elements to it. I mean, my there's a lot of unknowns, but I have a hunch that. I use the framing of Hashem. Hashem is jabbing, in particular, American Jews right now, jolting. And because there's a few things I think Hashem wants. He wants Jews to come home, and I mean that in a few different senses. In one sense is to our ancestral homeland. Another sense is coming home to the tribe, and the third sense is coming home to Him. And not necessarily. I don't think. I'm not saying with certainty Hashem or the system wants every Jew to go back to Israel, but those are generally the three things He wants. He wants Jews to be empowered to take responsibility, to accept the world as it is, and take responsibility for their decisions for it. Israeli Jews are doing they're the best model in humanity right now for an empowered society. American Jews aren't. I mean, I was just in Boulder. American Jews still don't want to take responsibility for their own safety. They're still complaining about, how people want to attack them and how the police aren't protecting them. And hey, they have the ability to go learn how to use firearms and protect themselves. I mean, the only reason why the attack in DC and Boulder were not mass casualty events was because these attackers were amateurs. There was nobody preventing, not a single person prevented these events from being mass casualty events. American Jews are, by and large, completely incapable of protecting themselves. There's not a single Jewish leader in the United States that's saying, we failed our own people by allowing these attacks to happen.
I will just say, I can't get into details, but I'll just say that I have two clients right now that see an exactly opposite picture, and they are taking matters into their own hands legally within the framework of the law, but definitely
that people know about, though.
Right, it's not
becoming the public discourse.
No. But
right.
my point is, if it's something that's already like an active, it's a big startup. People who are raising money. It's happening, and it will change. I mean, things
okay. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying to date, right?
No. There's no question. I'll again speed it up with your permission. There's no question that the big organizations, the Jewish organizations who are in whom Jews entrusted their well-being and safety are not only not functioning, they're probably helping to perpetuate the problem because it helps them stay, in business. If there was no hate in the world, the ADL would be unemployed. And I don't want to speak badly about the ADL. We had on the show a few people from the ADL and great people, but that is the reality. You know, these big systems that tend to self-perpetuate, usually not at the with the best interest of the people that they're supposed to protect and serve. But again, that is only that's a second circle story. What we're interested in is in that inner story, the inner circle story. What we need to do to help people overcome these two things that you brought up. You kind of like just kind of threw them into the conversation, but there were big things. Said accepting, accepting that you don't know everything and they can't control everything. Like that's a big, that's a tall order from a logical, Western mind, right? We can do with our own, let's roll our sleeves. Look what we've done. That illusion of control is very, very powerful.
So I have a few thoughts here, because we do have models for empowered leaders who started global movements. We have Gandhi, we have Martin Luther King Jr., and at least in the Jewish world, we have the early modern Zionists who reestablished sovereignty in the Jewish homeland.
Don't forget Moses. That was a big one as well.
I'm talking about contemporary. Of course, definitely Moshe.
All these people that you mentioned, they relinquished control. That was the whole point, and yet people didn't see that in their.
They accepted what was outside of their control,
which was
They accepted. They decided to stand to live according to their values and principles, knowing full well that they could be imprisoned, they could have their liberty taken from them, they could be killed for it, they could lose their friends, whatever. So they accepted the consequences for it. They decided to do it anyways. The difference between empowerment and power, or the primary difference, is power can be given and taken away from you. Empowerment cannot be given to you, and it cannot be taken from you. So you cannot, there's only so much you can do to help people walk that path to empowerment. Ultimately, it's a path that every individual has to take on their own.
That is true. You have to inspire people to empower themselves.
The consequence for having a greatly disempowered society is self-destruction. That's what happens. And that's why communism ends in self-destruction. Correct. The West is by and large disempowered.
And the radical Islam is super empowered. So
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in a sense they are. In another sense, they're not, because they blame all their problems on other people.
Oh yeah,
that's a chronic problem with the Arab world. That's why the Arab world is mostly fallen apart in a destitute situation, because they blame all of their problems on the United States and on Jews. It's always somebody else's fault. So they're active, but they're actually quite disempowered, which is why they're leading themselves to their own destruction.
Well, so if it's not it's not the big Satan, it's a little Satan. It's
right.
But that's a big thing. That's something that some people would say, verges on the spiritual awakening. If you ask people about spirituality, people who have a genuine spiritual experience, it always involves this sort of humbling of a person. But there's a lot to it. Again, we're not going to completely unpack it, but it's almost like a precondition for embarking on any sort of serious, meaningful spiritual path.
Absolutely,
is this humbleness, surrendering. It's a big thing, and it's not the same as letting go and just getting swept by. There is a place of free choice, but it involves a great deal of surrender on the one hand, and a great deal of, as you said, responsibility.
You're talking. This is not a remedy for the masses, though. You're talking.
No. Well, only for the Jews. Only for the Jews.
Even amongst the Jews, it's very people who are ready and capable.
Listen, we got to aim something. There aren't that many Jews, Seth, and we're not growing in numbers. We got to work with what we got, and 15, 16, whatever, 17 million. I looked at the numbers when Jonas was speaking. Optimistic estimates put it at like 7.5 million in America. Pessimistic, or like if you want, we're going very strict religious Jews, 5.9. That's the number. There's about, Israel is growing nicely. We're having more kids, even more than the Arab population right now. So, but all in all, it's still around the 15 mil. We haven't, that glass ceiling has not been broken, and probably the creator is going to keep it, always in check.
I think it's critical for us to be part of, and maybe really be the creators of a movement for empowerment that includes non-Jews.
That's a different story. If you want to talk about it, we could talk about it. We have a bit more time, but I think that's a big fork in the road for me and Seth. It's always like, okay, we gotta if I have to look at the just the pyramid of how things are structured, not in terms of it's not in terms of salary or benefits, but just in terms of influence in the system, because every system is a pyramid. Then if you don't fix what's happening at the top of the pyramid,
I agree.
Working with the bottom is going to be
I
agree. The feeling also is that the way the system, like we talked earlier about this law of nature, like the saturation point of water, and what happens with Jews. There's also some weird thing that in every industry, in every place, there's these Jews that are these hubs, and in entertainment, in law, in politics, wherever, in finance. So also, if something happens strong enough within the Jews, it'll 10 times, it'll flow through the system. Just even porn, every single place you go in the world, there's some Jew, right? There's always some Jew at the heart of it. So it doesn't matter what it is. So if we can get,
it's Ruben Sturman, by the way.
Well, who's it?
Ruben Sturman.
He's the guy who wears a religious guy, right?
Well, I
religious guy who
might be dead,
owns Pornhub or something.
He's he started pornography. Basically.
Oh, the guy who started it also is a Jew. Yeah. Okay, that's another story. I'm talking about the guy who's banking on it today.
Those pesky Jews.
So the point is that in every place we look where something spreads, there's some hub there. So the concept here is the goal is for everyone. The goal is peace and love for everyone. Speak and I both have day jobs. We have to find where is that point to push on to get the maximum leverage. And the feeling is, and we're both surrounded by he's in Israel, so not surrounded by as many non-Jews as me, but the point is that in this kind of work right here, if we're trying to find this circle of Jews, because if we can do that, then amongst us, it will flow through, like you go back out into your network and I go back out into my network. It'll flow through the system.
That's right. So, I think that's right. I mean, first it starts with the individual, with the self, and it emanates from there. And we definitely have a synergy as a community. I mean, I'm much more potent with my community, even here in San Francisco and the broader community. So I think that's right. And there's a chronic problem of American Jews who are a very capable group of people as a whole. But most of the American Jewry at large is disempowered, and there's going to continue to be shocks in the system, and we're moving in that direction.
It's also not their fault, by the way. They grew up in a very.
Let's say it's nobody's fault. Let's say it's totally
not
natural,
about.
Right?
It's not about fault.
So what do we do from here? What do we have to offer?
Aside from being empowered and being, walking the streets with my head high and being part of the community and talking about it, I don't know. I don't know what I personally can do, because at the end of the day, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink. And people don't. There's still a lot of cognitive dissonance. Less so. I mean, I'm noticing, especially in the Jews in New York, with this, Mamdani winning the primary, that's been a jolt to them, and they're spurring to action. But if you look at, in contrast, there's over 1 million Jews in New York. The community didn't produce a single candidate for the primary. Not a single. They didn't put their weight behind a single kid. They didn't, right? They were completely uninvolved in this. And then, the Mamdani happens and okay, that's the contrast. Now they're spurred. There's countless WhatsApp groups organizing, whatever. But I will say that the Mamdani winning the primary election is actually the smaller story, in my opinion. The bigger story is that the establishment of the Democratic Party has been endorsing him. That, to me, is a significant step to the institutionalization of anti-Zionism.
That's the step. There were so many other steps before that one.
Right? Yes, right. But this is a particularly notable step.
Obama, Clinton, all those guys came out and congratulated him.
These guys are, I'm sorry to say, I mean, I don't want to.
Well, Schumer, the Democratic Party, their official Twitter profile of the Democratic Party. I mean, there's been some pushback, but even after his comments on the Globalize the Intifada slogan, there was no pushback on him from.
I'm surprised, as a New Yorker, Seth, and maybe as a future New Yorker, Jonas, I'm surprised nobody came out with a campaign, just showing the, state of, garbage on the street, the subway, the traffic, versus some country in the Middle East. Who cares? You're the mayor of New York. Take care of this. Clean the streets, man. Who cares about some other country? I'm flabbergasted that people actually.
Bro, it's exactly the same thing. It's not about the garbage on the streets. It's totally about giving everybody a sense of belonging and giving everyone making everyone feel that they're part of it.
Okay, no, but it's a big city. I mean, I understand that there's a population that he identified and he speaks to, but a lot of people we know that there's a great silent majority that tries to live life and commutes back and forth and tries to raise a family in Brooklyn and in Queens and life is that when I moved to New York in the late 90s. It was just coming out of the slums and it was picking up and it was still shooting in my neighborhood, but then it became really, really good. And then there was like this golden era until the Depression, but even still people wrote it out because you could and things were great until COVID. And then after COVID, it just started to, the tower of cards started to come down and everything was people leaving the city and criminals released into quality of life just went. So I'm asking myself out loud, what's going on here? And if just the story of this belonging and whatnot, if this accounts for all the other millions that are supposed to, but again, that's a side story. Now we care about.
But that's interesting though. There's something I think really intriguing about that. Maybe what's going on is you have a relatively small contingent of people, the Democratic Socialists of America, the sort of communists and Islamists, relatively, they're a small minority, but they're very potent because they've created this environment of belonging that's attracting a lot of people who know nothing about either. And most people are just trying to get along and go along in their daily lives. They're not paying attention to the policy of any candidate. They probably can't even list the name of any of the candidates. But what they do notice is this environment of belonging. And so you have a relatively small group of people. They're making a lot of noise. They offer people belonging. They're able to have a huge amount of influence as a result of that. And the American Jewish community can totally do this because at the end of the day, American Jews, the values and principles of American Jewry are highly aligned with that of the average American.
Besides the religious Jews, I think in general, a lot of Jews are ashamed of these things, though.
Ashamed of this alignment with the rest of American society?
No, to these values that you're talking about, these Jewish values. They're ashamed to come out and talk about being Jewish or talk about Jewish values.
Yeah, I don't think
ashamed or afraid.
Well, combination.
Because they're disempowered. They're afraid of the consequences, and they're not willing to live by their principles and values, regardless of the consequences.
I think it's deeper than that, and we touched on it many times. I think people have for all these reasons that we listed in the past hour, they have disconnected from the general trajectory of the system of life, of where it's going, the end game, which is a lot bigger than most people can imagine. It's bigger than simply a house and a job and a car and
That's right.
4 kids, right? There is something deeper and bigger lurking. They disconnected from that. They forgot what it means. They don't have that. And so why would they espouse any values that sort of make them stand out and be singled out? For what reason? Give me that illusion of safety and anonymity, which is the same reason, by the way, that I came to New York. I left Israel. I had some problems here, and I was young. I was like, I'll just go become anonymous, and that's great. That's life. But the Jewish role calls for the opposite of anonymity. It calls for service, for rising to the occasion, for responsibility, for hard choices, for carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And most people they don't see the end game. So why even, right? Why even get into these hot waters? So that, I think, is the problem. That's what we need to solve. And if you solve that, if you show
a big enough goal for everyone,
the big goal in life, the third temple, if you want to call it.
How would you do? Okay, we can't define it as that. So how would we define it?
I don't know. Something at the end of the rainbow. You need a new image, a new picture like that. I don't know what it is. By the way, for evangelicals, it is a third temple. They like that picture. For Jews, if they don't understand the internality of that concept, then I don't know, something. I'm not sure. I think that's why we're inviting people here to talk about it. And maybe Jonas has a picture.
There's a practical point here, because I grew up in Berkeley, and I grew up secular, going to a Reformed synagogue. When I was at UCLA, I lived in a Jewish co-op. We were 20 Jewish students. Half the house was from the LA Orthodox community. That was my exposure to traditional Jewish life. And it had a profound impact on me that changed the trajectory of the rest of my life. And I'm now part of that community. It is very difficult once you get to young adulthood to enter that, because of the base of knowledge that you need to have to really participate competent in that is enormous. And at least in the U.S., the observant Jewish community is doing a pretty abysmal job, in my opinion, in making the environment welcoming and accessible to Jews who don't have that background. And I think that's really key here, because you have these Jews who grew up in a secular background. They feel a strong connection to the Jewish tribe, but they don't really understand what the tribe is.
We can offer more than Shabbat dinner and
absolutely.
It has to be more than sitting and learning the Parsha and coming for Friday night. There has to be.
Well, they have to learn the fundamentals. How do you make sense of the Parsha? You have to learn Jewish history. Who are we? Who are we coming from? What have Jews done before? There's a lot. There's a lot to learn. And as an adult, outside of Jewish day schools, where do you go learn that stuff?
Jew Function podcast.
Exactly. Well, first of all, I think we need to start another pod just on that.
It's all in there. We just need to make little clips. All this.
Maybe I still feel like this. A lot of it is like a nice like the warm up band. The guys who open for the big show, right? All these things are just the opening act, and it's not the main show. The main show is that we are called to rise above our nature. That there's no other way of saying it. That's what all these things that we
break the cycle, to break the cycle that's been playing out time and again over millennia.
To really stop being animals, because right now we're behaving like animals. Most of us, most of the time, are animals. We're led by our desires. We're controlled by our desires, and we have very little choice in the matter. We think we choose. It's just an illusion. If we knew where the bigger pleasure is, we would just go there, and there would be no choice. Nobody would choose against feeling pleasure. We just don't know sometimes. So we call it free choice. That's not free choice. That's just blindness, groping in the dark. But
it's imprisonment.
Yeah. I mean, it's just animals. Except animals are still connected to the system. They're guided. They don't make mistakes. In the wild, in nature, animals are really doing perfectly fine. We were already left that. We were disconnected from that root. You put a Jew in the jungle, he'll be dead in 5 minutes. But he's already much closer to the degree of the human Adam, someone who resembles Adam from the word domé, resembling already a higher example of what it means to be a human, resembling the upper force, some would say, right? That's someone who goes above their nature, above their egoistic desires, immediate, short-term desires for fulfillment, and looks for a different source.
So I know people who figured out how to, so to speak, jailbreak people's minds.
Yeah, who are those people? Give us the names and addresses.
I will give you names. So there is this guy named Joe Hudson. He lives in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. And his day job is he's an executive coach for mostly, I think, tech executives and other Fortune 500 companies. But his true mission is really to jailbreak as many people as possible. And he's built a team around him over the past decade or so. So he's got a team of very competent coaches, but he's the most visible. If you go look up Joe Hudson, you'll find him on social media. The past year or so, 18, 24 months, he's been building a presence there. But they have, and I can say this because I've gone through their workshops, and one of the coaches is a mentor of mine, and I'm continuing to work with them. They have a repeatable model for showing people the path they have to walk on their own, but showing them the path and giving them support, functional support, for realizing how they're responding to the world, how they're blaming the world for their own state of affairs. And once people get awareness of that, they want out. They want to take responsibility. They start accepting, oh, I really want A, and A has the potential consequences of B and C, which I really don't want, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to take that risk.
But shall we break this little picture now, or give him another few minutes to? This is great. This is a great first step, but it's almost like someone who's working on getting out of prison. You know those stories we've seen in the movies, right? And they find someone in jail who knows how to, he knows where all the guards are and everything, and how to dig a hole with a spoon through the wall and cover it with the book, right? But then they come out, they emerge, but then they realize they're in a bigger prison. They've never left they left the little prison. They're now in a bigger prison. The escape that we're talking about, the freedom we're talking about, the prison we're talking about, is not something that you can break out of on your own. And this is really the key. And this is why Jews are important in this juncture. And this is where it kind of leaves the logical. I mean, there is logic behind it, but it leaves the intuitively logical understanding of the world, and it goes into a different place. If you really want to break free, you have to break free of your own self, and to do it, you need the force that created that self. You can't do it on your own. You can do it with the help of friends. Friends can help you on the path, but the path has to connect you to that force. If you're not connected to that force, everything else is just an illusion. Another illusion.
Say more about that force. Say more about connecting to this force.
Well, it's I'll say the reverse of that first. It's like trying to escape. I'll give the metaphor, which is not mine. It's brilliant. It's by of a Kabbalist that we study with. So
these concepts are all in the Jewish tradition, by the way.
Of course. No, a lot of them. Again, you'll see
everything I'm talking about.
A lot, and there's a lot of similarities. But again, trying to do it on your own is like chasing a thief in the market. Everybody's running, hey, the thief, and he's also yelling, thief, eventually, like, who's right? That's exactly what's happening. And again, it's not a bad thing. The fact that people are engaged in that is great. They're already more advanced, right, on this ladder than the sheep that Seth was talking about in the very beginning. They're already trying to break out of it. That's an important first step. But there's a force a force of love. It's called the upper force. It's called the creator. It has all these fancy names, but it's simply a force above all the other forces. That's the force that the Judaism talks about, that really the internality of Judaism, Kabbalists have been talking about. They're describing only that force. It's love, it's bestowal. It only has one direction, which is positive. And it created something. And the meaning of creation means to create something that doesn't exist, did not exist before. It's not that I took some stuff from here and I made it here. That's not creativity. That's divergent thinking. That's not the same. To create means it wasn't there before, right? Sure. So if I'm all plus, I made a minus. That was the big startup, right? That's what was created. That force created a negative, pulling an egoistic quality, a desire for self. You want to break out of that, you got to go to the craftsman who made me, as the saying goes in common.
I agree, and I think it's when you're connected to that, it. It's self-evident. I think it's critical that the Jewish community has enough leaders who have done at least the first step. And we have a gross lacking of that, especially in the United States. That's where I think that's a preliminary step for American Jews.
Even more, and I think Seth will agree with me. I think if we can get people to realize that we're at war, and
absolutely,
it's not only this external war where people getting Molotoved or whatever in the street and then pushed and hit and all. That's part of it. But
there's a physical aspect to it, yeah.
There's a physical aspect to it, but there's a much greater war, and that is the war on this. It's the slow realization that there's something that's preventing us from uniting, from rising, from all those fears and doubts and the insecurities and all the stuff that we talked about. Yeah. It can all be traced back to that tiny egoistic desire for just give me. Where's that little thing that I can fill and take it under the blanket with me? That is the thing.
Yeah, people don't, and this is Jews and also Americans don't want to acknowledge that there is a war on American streets, because then they'll have to do something about it, and they don't want to. They don't want it they don't want their comfortable life to be disturbed.
Well, guess what? It's been disturbed. Let us,
right. Them ignoring it is not actually, it's one of the, I think my favorite principle that Joe talks about, he calls it the golden algorithm. If you make decisions in fear, you're in fear of something, you're trying to avoid something, those decisions are going to actually bring to fruition exactly what it is you're afraid of. So, a lot of people like to talk about, thinking about romance and marriage and whatever. I think is a really good place to show it. If you're afraid, of telling, your partner that something in the relationship isn't working for you, you're afraid that that's gonna lead to disconnection. Well, and so you avoid telling them. That avoiding of telling them what's going on, that's going to lead disconnection in the relationship.
People don't want to leave an abusive relationship because of the effort that it will take to leave and then to find someone new. I'm staying with an abusive partner, right? We hear that stories all the time. What we're saying is that this war on the outside is actually happening because you're afraid or you refuse to wage the war on the inside. That's our big message. That's what the Jew Function is trying to say. Wage the war inside. Get up and do the war on the inside, on that egoistic inclination that's been governing you, that's natural. Mm-hmm. Rise to the supernatural degree that you're being called to, and we're not inventing it. People have been writing about it. Jewish texts are full of that. If you just know how to read it, if you have a teacher, it's there. It's ours. And we're saying, get up and go to war on that. And then you'll solve the war on the outside, because you won't be able to win the war on the streets. You're 15 million. There's 350 million in America, and how many ever billions in the world. We can't win that war, through sheer individual, by my own, I'm going to do it. You can't. The odds are against you.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, my thesis here is that the very seed of that, at the very root, the sort of the root of transformation there is empowerment, is taking responsibility for your decisions. And with that, you can start to see reality more clearly, because you start seeing how you're avoiding reality because you're avoiding things you're afraid of. You're avoiding states of affairs that scare you.
Seth, any wise words before I give Jonas a beautiful quote that I found to read for our listeners?
The thing that's bothering me, and that I think is our next step to clarify or to figure out, I don't know, we'll solve it now. We talked about belonging a bunch of times. We also described all of these wonderful things are naturally, they come out of being a Jew, of what it means to be a Jew. We need to discover how to disseminate God's message, the Creator's message. Like, if unity is in there, and everyone, like you said, the temple's not for us, it's for everyone. The goal is that everyone will belong, that everyone will have what they need, that everyone will have people looking out for them. That sounds wonderful. And there's people running into the street chanting for that who hate us. And it doesn't make sense. So, Jonas, good luck figuring it out, and count on us as a resource to figure out how to. I mean, you're out there talking to a lot of people. How do we? Well, we need some upper guidance, is what I think has to happen. Like you said a few times during our talk here, I had an epiphany. We need an epiphany. We need, through this yearning to solve this, to have some kind of upper understanding of how we can communicate this. And we need the Creator to flip that switch so that that this love can pour down for people.
So I have a very beautiful quote for you. It's from a book called Meshivat Nefesh. Maybe, give it a read out loud, of course, for everyone to hear it, if you don't mind.
Our sages said, man's inclination overcomes him every day. Were it not for the help of the Creator, he would not overcome it. Rather, man must only commit to strengthening himself each time anew, and not retreat from this war cause oneself despair under any circumstances. Certainly, in this war, it is impossible to evidently see who is the winner, since the war is still long, the exile is intensifying, and each one experiences what he experiences. Yet as long as we are holding our weapons in our hands, and our main weapon is the prayer, and as long as we do not cause ourselves to despair from this war and keep gripping to our weapons, we are winning for sure. Since as long as one strengthens oneself in prayer and outcry to the Creator, he is winning the war, as this is essentially the victory.
Wise people said a lot of wise things way before us. So maybe, if we open some books, that would be a great also addition to that journey of empowerment, I hope. Jonas, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It was unexpected, but it was, I had an epiphany a few, just last week. I'm like, I gotta check on Jonas. What's going on? He did.
Very happy to talk to you, man, and wishing you tons of success. And just in the short conversation, we heard about a lot of stories how you're connected between intelligence officers in South America and Jewish leaders. So you're a hub, and rely on us if there's anything we can help you with. But wishing you a lot of success to get to flow this out there into the world.
Absolutely. Well, our collaboration will continue, I'm sure.
It's only just begun. We are the Jew Function. Please like, follow, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review. We actually got an influx of subscribers this past week. I don't know what we did, but thank you everyone for joining. Follow us on X and everywhere else. Because of the crazy shadow ban, we keep losing followers. So follow back and just spread the word. That's the best help you can do right now. Just get these conversations in front of more people, and listen to the first season if you haven't done it already. And a few great episodes are on their way as we speak. So stay tuned, and we'll see everybody next week.